Happy Friday to you and yours from the Pats Interference Podcast, brought to you by the lovely, spectacular, smart, clever, and ever-informative CLNS Media Network. Solo for a second here, we're going to bring in Chris Mason from MassLive to do most interesting characters in the Patriots organization because it's June, and that's the content we do. We'll probably do for the next 6 weeks. And then your mailbag questions, as I promised, and slow myself down, mindful of all the wonderful ratings and reviews that it sounds sarcastic when I say it. But all of you have shared over the last few weeks. I know I talk fast. We're working on it. But while we're on the topic of you, I wanted to say thank you. I have asked you time and again, listeners, viewers, subscribers, non-subscribers, people in YouTube rabbit holes from 3:30 in the morning who I'm so sorry stumbled upon this face for your money to support my friend Doug. And I am so proud and happy to share with you that Doug raised, with his wife and a wonderful team, $317,000 for cancer research as part of his campaign with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. He is officially the Visionary of the Year, which I know you don't know what that means. I didn't until I was a part of the team, but basically in this Boston chapter, he raised the most money among 12 very motivated, invested candidates who had incredible support staffs and teams. And I can't say enough about the guy. To lose his daughter as he did 18 months ago and turn around and give back to the same world that took so much from him and all of that money. And the fact that you guys raised thousands of dollars over the last 10 weeks when I asked you to and invited you to come on the show. And even last night after I go to bed and one of you donates and it pops up on my phone at 12:03 in the morning, $250 more with a special note to Doug. It means the world to me. The best part about this job, sure, is going to games. And it's writing stories and it's making phone calls and learning new things. To me, it's still the connection in the community. And this is year 4 of this podcast. I love that we have some sticky returning subscribers and listeners and viewers. And the fact that you guys give back, not just your time, which is valuable enough, but your money to really worthy causes. And the most common guest we have in this podcast, a close friend and my teammate. I want to say thank you a million times. But we have a show to do today. And I say that in the sense, not that you hear it most often in this Boston media market. So with that, we are going to bring on Chris Mason as promised. Pal, happy Friday.
Happy Friday, my man. Thanks for having me on. And yeah, first of all, dude, shout out Doug. Incredible job with that, and Hallie forever.
Yeah. It's I got to be honest. The event was last night at Granite Links. My first time there. The first thing you realize is the half mile of parking on a Thursday night where golf weather is good that's on the road before you even get to like the first sign. This is Granite Links, which says the parking lot is full. And my wife and I were already late for personal reasons, but the program didn't start late. Anyway, you find a parking spot, you get in, and it's a whole gala. It's basically black tie optional, and all the families, all the teams are there. But the event itself, and I think Doug would tell you this or tell me this too, is kind of strange that everyone's there, obviously, for some like terrible, horrible reasons. But there's a dancing portion at the end of the night once they ask and announce all of the winners and all the money that's raised. And they have these videos and speakers of people who have had cancer. So you just get like emotionally drained. And then they flip on, and he gave this speech, and it was wonderful. But then they flip on the Black Eyed Peas like you're in high school and expect you just to rush the dance floor like it's prom 15 years ago. And it was just like, I don't really know what to do with my hands except for clap, which we did a million times over. And again, it was just a spectacular event. But maybe that's more charity fundraisers that I just haven't been to, and this was a new world for me. So, yeah. All right. 8 most intriguing Patriots. I don't know if we're going to get to 8. I just told you off the air, I think we're going to have some overlap here. And the point is not only just to fill content in June, but also to zoom out because we talk a lot about players. We talk about a lot about coaches. When we were texting yesterday, I said, pick anyone in the organization. So when you think now, especially in your new role, by the way, do you want to add anything to this? Because I think this is really cool. It's not all Patriots all the time for you. You get to do some enterprise and big picture stories.
Yeah, it's been really cool. So MassLive moved me into a sports enterprise role, which is great. It's a lot of features, more in-depth stories, and like they're giving me the time to really report on something. So that's been amazing. But yeah, it's across all 4 pro sports, and thus far, been a couple of months. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I normally would say this off the top, but for all the reasons I just droned on about, I did not. If you're not reading Chris, you should, because I am reading Chris, who is now in the back of my mind more than ever when I have similarly long enterprise features going on. Is he doing this? Is he going to beat me to it? What is it going to look like? But I'm so happy for you because, A, you're good at this type of work, but B, in media, you don't often get that time and space where just more is more all the time. And when you have less output, sometimes you forget that less can be more with those type of stories. And I really hope it pays off. Which lots of love to MassLive everywhere, because I was there and Mark's there and Karen's there and Jim and everybody else and Matt Fautour, I guess. Okay. The number one person, when you think about this team, the season, all the change, the coaches, players, front office, the hot dog vendors, who's the most intriguing person to you right now in the Patriots organization for next season?
All right, I'm going to start with the obvious one. He's going to be on both lists. It's Drake May. He plays the most important position in North American sports. He's entering the second year. The year 2 leap is one of the biggest, most pronounced leaps from rookie seasons to second years. He's the most important person in the organization. He's the most important person in the organization for probably the next 10 years, for good or bad, however it goes. He is the guy. So he's incredibly intriguing to me right now. And for better or for worse, I think he's intriguing to everyone to the point that you're getting OTA stats every single day from like 3/4 speed drills with minimal defense where, and it fills hours and hours because people are so fascinated by him. But it's got to be Drake, number one for me. I don't think there's a more intriguing person in the organization right now.
Can I break your brain?
You can try.
Not on my list.
You're not intrigued by Drake May.
So
you're the one.
This is a moment where, first of all, I pause and wonder, are we too in the weeds on some of this? And then the next thought in my brain, which may have been broken before I tried to break yours, is actually no. Because look, for me, when I think about intriguing for us as people who live this, day in and day out and all the finer details and who's the UDFAs that they just signed, like what's his middle name, like the stuff that we have to know, that's the job. There is a temptation to gloss over the most obvious storyline sometimes. I think Drake May will be the most influential, important part of this team without question, as you just laid out. To me, I feel like I already know Drake May. And maybe this is my belief in him as a special, legitimate franchise quarterback seeping into what I know. And that gap is really important, right? Like that often defines takes and teams and futures, belief and knowledge. He's also kind of a straightforward kid to me. And I mean, you went down to North Carolina, tell me if I'm wrong, youngest in a super athletic family. Dad played quarterback, major college football, the NFL. Mom was an athlete, brothers everyone knows. And I know who he is. I know what he wants. I know how he's going to get there. And I think I'm just going to see the better version of the same guy last year. But what am I missing?
See, I kind of felt that same way about Mike Vrabel, and that's why he's not on my list, is because I think we already know Mike Vrabel and we know what he's about. But I think you're at the point with Drake now where, you got to do it. You got to put it all together. It's one thing to have the resume and to have the flashes and to be like, oh, yeah, I could totally see why they picked him where they did. And I could see what his potential is. You got to realize the potential. And I think now things are set up where he's in a much better spot to do that. So I think his performance is going to be incredibly intriguing this year where, it's going to be fascinating week in and week out. Can he take this step? Can he really rise up to this elite level and be one of these AFC quarterbacks that you need if you're going to make a run? So that's why, to me, I think he's number one.
Yeah, I like it. All right, I'm going to go with a little bit of a deeper cut. John Stryker, who most people know as Stretch, he is a 35-year-old vice president of football operations and strategy. This, of course, you all know. I'm telling this to the folks on the outside who go, like, oh, that name sounds kind of familiar. Was he like the game management guy for Vrabel in Tennessee and then McVay last year? Yes, that's exactly who he was. Except for most of his NFL existence, I will say the public persona has been he's an extension of Mike Vrabel. Like he's an appendage of this, obviously with his own set of skills. When you get to be a vice president of football operations and strategy, and this is someone who's had backgrounds with running teams and rosters at the college level and obviously game management, but has been more involved in scouting. He's not only going to be in the booth telling Mike Vrabel when to challenge, when not to, when to take timeouts. He's going to be digging up loopholes in the rule book. He's going to be talking to all of the players. He's going to be talking to all of the coaches. He is going to be perhaps the second most powerful person in the organization, both because he remains in proximity to the most powerful person, being Mike Vrabel, but also because separate from that, he has all of his hands in all of these different areas. And I don't know what he's going to do. Like, he seems like a very smart guy, but that person who's going to be you ever do any like drama or acting in high school?
I did not.
You call him like a stage manager, like they're calling shots of like, put this here and the scenery moves there and they're doing a little bit of this. Hand up. That was not me behind the scenes, but did a little stage work. Anyway, We don't know anything about that guy, really, at this stage. That, to me, makes him the most intriguing guy on my list.
Yeah, well, I think he's a fascinating combination, too, of like roles being melded together, where it seems like for Vrabel, he's almost a combination of an Ernie Adams and a Bears Nigerian,
Exactly.
where he's like his right-hand man in both of those roles. And I think Stretch is a good pick, man. I think he is going to be intriguing, and he's, I think, going to be impactful on these games in real time, where he's impactful on the field and away from it when they're doing personnel stuff. So I think that's a good pick on your part.
He's always around. I will say this because, when we were at the Combine, and he's basically shadowing Vrabel in his old role, which was special assistant to the head coach. He had that his first 2 years, I want to say, in Tennessee, and then was director of football development. One of these titles that doesn't really tell you anything, but like, you're important enough if you get them. He was shorter than I expected for someone whose nickname was Stretch. Like, I'm thinking you need to be 6'7", 6'8", or above. I know, like, he might be in the neighborhood of 6'7", but it wasn't like an intimidating type of height. Maybe he's a slender guy, but
I don't know, man. I'm 6'1", and he's significantly taller than me. Where I was like, okay, I kind of get it. Like, I think if you're over 6'3", you earn the Stretch. I don't know what his actual height is if we want to try and ballpark it, but I think once you eclipse that, it's like, okay.
Yeah. He's it's an interesting character for sure. All right, so he wasn't on your list?
He was not on my list. Nope.
Okay, all right, no overlap. Who's number 2?
So for this one, I'll go front office like you here, and I think it's Ryan Cowden. I believe had the great analogy. Did you call him a cuckoo bird at one point? The bird that comes in and kicks the other birds out of the nest, and suddenly it's his nest. I think that could be Ryan Cowden, and the entire complexion of this front office is fascinating. And I think eventually you're going to see Cowden kind of, cuckoo bird his way in there, and it is going to become his room eventually. So I'm fascinated to see how that dynamic works. And he is number 2 for me right here.
So I laugh not because I was really pleased with myself in that description or analogy, but I just remembered that as I said that, there's a decent chance, because there are a lot of televisions at Gillette Stadium that play constantly sports content, as they do in every pro football headquarters. That might have been the way I introduced myself to Ryan Cowden, with whom I've since spoken in person, but he just might be like, oh, this is the cuckoo who called me a cuckoo bird on television before ever saying a word. But look, I stand by it. This is not backtracking. I did not backtrack when I saw him. It didn't come up. It's an interesting dynamic, because history would tell you that Elliot Wolf by now, again, June 6th, would have already been gone, and he's not. And I believe Elliot is an asset in the front office, as much as everyone believed that after his first draft class, we all knew as much as we needed to know about him. It's not because of any relationship. It's just because of his history and what GMs told me about him. I don't know whether he's convinced Vrabel of the same, if he's sticking around, as I posited, as a willing number 2, as someone who's his mom's side of the family is local. His aunt lives down the street. His girls are young. You're sick of them moving. Like, just stay here, succeed. You're the guy that drafted Drake May. You become a GM 2-3 years down the line. But it is clear that the relationship that Mike Vrabel has with Ryan Cowden runs deep. Like, when you're the first guy he brings over, the only guy he brings over, you're not going anywhere. And that also means you're not going down the totem pole.
Right. And when he comes in and gets basically the same title as Elliot, except I believe Elliot has executive in front of his, and then Cowden has the same title. It's like, okay, so these two are essentially, Elliot, you might say, has final say, but if Elliot and Cowden are at odds on something, Vrabel is obviously the tiebreaker. And more times than not, you think he's probably going to go with his guy who he's bringing in. So I think that's kind of a savvy way to structure the front office for Vrabel, where he can kind of get what he wants a lot of the time. And I think in time, Cowden's just going to become more powerful here.
Yeah, and I had tip to your teammate, Mark Daniels, because I remember when we talked to Elliot after day 2 of the draft, they had just taken Trayvon Henderson and Kyle Williams and Jared Wilson. And I don't remember what I had asked him, but it prompted the answer of, oh, we actually had this debate at 38 of whether to take one guy or the other being Henderson. And then the person that they wanted got picked before them. And it turns out it was the Arizona offensive lineman whose name I still can't pronounce. And immediately, without any evidence, so this is obviously not to be shared until it's more than a month later, I'm thinking, oh, there was a Vrabel Cowden guy, and then there was an Elliot Wolf, Alonzo Highsmith, now AJ Highsmith in the picture guy. And I don't know that for a fact, but when those kind of hypothetical schisms come to mind so easily, I think it's a little telling, because just where those guys' backgrounds came. But so far, those schisms are not anything more, or maybe anything, than imaginary because they're making it work, and Elliot's still here, and I think there's good reason for that. All right, number 2 on my list is the most obvious pick I have on my whole list. And he's gotten a lot of run on this podcast and TV shows and radios, and he will continue to because he's the first number 1 receiver to be in New England in like 10 years. Stefon Diggs, okay? I don't know what he's going to do next on a boat. His girlfriend is one of the most famous women on the planet. He is far ahead of ACL recovery and rehab than any human, frankly, that I've come across. And this is on the wrong side of 30. Already mentioned the type of player that he is and would be in New England if he does get healthy. He's also clearly a leader in the room, which I don't like reading too much into like the pictures they post on the team website and Instagram because that's all just to generate the same positive impression. But when he breaks down the receivers, like how he acts, how he moves is going to be how Pop Douglas moves and Jaylen Pulk moves, not just running their routes, but off the field and in the building. That's a lot of influence. That's a lot of intrigue to me about a guy that could really elevate everyone. Or sometimes we take like the scenic route through the boat on Memorial Day with a little pink bag and go, I don't know how we got here, but Stefon Diggs led us.
He was also on my list. So this is the first overlap that we have where, I mean, how can you not be fascinated by this guy? And I mean, I think he was fascinating before the boat stuff, but now that that's already starting to creep in and Vrabel is clearly irritated to be answering questions about that in May when that happens, the dynamics are fascinating. And it's like you said, he's a tone setter in that room. And young guys, there's a lot of young guys there. They're going to follow him. So what kind of example is he going to set? And for all the off the field stuff, then he comes to OTAs last week and looks incredibly ahead of schedule for where I expected him to be, where he starts running through these drills. And it's like, all right, well, he's definitely not going to do this one, right? Not only does he do it, but he's like dusting other guys in it. So I think that he's incredibly fascinating. I don't know that they've had like a receiver this intriguing since Randy Moss.
Yeah. Yeah, and that intrigue doesn't speak to, receivers who have been better than Stefon Diggs. Like, if you got the Wes Welker stands or Edelman as prime, yada, yada. Like, intrigue is about everything. It's just like what compels me. It's not how good you are in the field, strictly. But I like that. All right, so he would have been number 3. Who's the last one on your list?
Milton Williams.
Yeah.
So when you give a guy like that the money that he got, can he take that next step where he's never played more than 50% of the defensive snaps in a year, and now he's being looked at as the guy in that defensive line room? How is he going to set the tone? Because I think a lot of guys are going to follow him too. If him and Christian Barmore are side by side, they could be a game-wrecking tandem if that works. If Williams does all the right things, if Barmore's healthy, they can be incredibly impactful interior defensive linemen. I don't know that you'll have a better pass rushing tandem in the league this year. But then there's the other side of it. If Williams isn't up to the task with this increased workload, how does that go? Is he going to come into training camp in great shape? Because in the past we've seen, sometimes linemen get paid and the fitness is no longer a priority. How is Williams going to be? Early returns are good. He's winning sprints in the spring. Vrabel's getting in his ear when he's like half speeding to the end because he's so far ahead of guys. We'll see how that goes, but he's fascinating to me. And some of that too is probably, we know a lot of guys on this team already. He's a totally new face in here. So for me, he's number 4.
When I talk about the power and influence of guys who just get paid that amount of money, and Stefon Diggs is the first example, Milton Williams is arguably an even bigger one, right? Like I know Diggs comes in with a lot more, experience, and you could go legacy and stature in the league. But Milton Williams is getting paid a lot more money than basically everyone else on the team. Milton Williams just won a Super Bowl. So I think there are fair questions about a guy who has not played 50% of the snaps in a season and is now the rock upon which Mike Vrabel's rebuilding this whole new defense. It's a lot to ask. But the little things that you do here, which I loved Vrabel, by the way, correcting, heard that quote from Milton Williams being in a separate press conference weeks later, tucks it in the back of his mind, speaks to us, gets asked about Milton Williams. He goes, oh, by the way, that was not me cussing him out. He'll know when I'm cussing him out for not finishing straight sprints all the way to the end, even if he has a lead. But the point is, the fact that he does have the lead like that Christian Barmore is talking about, their relationship, that Joshua Farmer, 4th-round pick, disappointed as could be early day 3 of the draft, even after he gets picked, is telling us, that dude Milton Williams took like a half hour with me in my 30 visit and just wanted to chat and make me better. That's a guy that I didn't know a whole lot about, but the little tidbits you gather, the little rumblings, little nuggets, paint the portrait of someone that the Patriots are willing to pay for, not just because he was this incredible interior pass rusher, but he'll be able to bring everyone along, as you would hope, from the highest paid player on the team. I like that pick.
Right. And just like for inherently as complicated as locker room dynamics can be, sometimes they're really simple. And it's what is the highest paid player doing in here and how is he setting the tone for the rest of the room? And then, if he's busting his ass, he's doing extra work, guys are going to follow. If he's loafing, then it's suddenly like, you see what's going on over here? I don't know. So I think for as complicated as those things can be sometimes, they can also really be simple.
Yeah. One big example, obviously, is Brady, right? Like he was an extension of Belichick, and everyone had to follow suit. A smaller, lesser negative one would have been, I don't think it was a surprise, and correct me if I'm wrong, that Devon Godchow got a lot more vocal when he had another contract extension and the ear of the head coach last year. And I don't think that was necessarily a positive for the defense.
No, I would definitely agree with you on that. And even, going back to when I was covering the Red Sox and David Price is the highest paid pitcher in there, also setting the tone in the clubhouse and not always in a great way.
Because this podcast is never a straight like Route 1 highway, just straight through the topics, I need to veer off for a second and give me 30 seconds on what the hell is happening with the Red Sox. Did we miss the boat? Are they underachieving? I need ex-Red Sox writer Chris Mason to set me straight.
They're just not very good at anything in particular right now, where like the starting rotation, I think, is the biggest issue, where after Crochet, who's like number two? Who's your number two guy right now? It just doesn't exist. And if there's no number two, guess what? There's no number three. And suddenly, like, I think the rotation's a mess, but some of the stuff in the field, like the fundamentals, the stupid things that they do sometimes, I don't know, where you had Core at a loss for words earlier this week and kind of frustrated to a point that I don't think we'd seen him in a while. Some of that does fall on him. They're a mess. They need to figure it out. Maybe a big weekend in New York can turn it around for them. Maybe that turns into like a galvanizing moment. But right now, they just don't look good. And I think the rotation is the biggest issue.
Okay. Thank you, Red Sox writer Chris. We'll send you back, bring back Patriots writer Chris, Enterprise writer Chris. Yeah, I don't think this is a well-timed New York weekend, but we shall see. All right, two more on my list. Both of them are coaches. Both of them are new coaches. I don't have a whole lot on number 3, but we could spend 20 minutes on number 4. Number 3 is Todd Downing because of his proximity to Stefon Diggs and the first person that is going to have to deal with day-to-day stuff, if it does arise, with him not getting enough targets, his influence on those younger receivers. Again, whether this could be good or bad, I don't know. We're going to see. But the person who's going to see it the most and up closest is going to be Todd Downing, who also not only is just a receivers coach in his first year, but is bringing in concepts, has brought in concepts to the Patriots playbook. We don't know a whole lot about him, except for he has like one of the most boring names in NFL coaching, just like Todd Downing. Like if you were creating a character of a substitute teacher on a new sitcom, Todd Downing would be in the mix when you're trying to put them up on the board. Todd Downing will have influence in the playbook. The most talented skill position player they've had in forever is coaching a new position. There's a lot to learn here about him, even if he's been kind of a coaching lifer. The other one I had, and you can take either one and we'll wrap up with that coach, is Terrell Williams, who obviously has been away from the team. My suspicion is that he will be back during training camp. And he's a 50-year-old, mostly defensive line coach when you go through his resume and his Wikipedia, whatever. Really well regarded by Dan Campbell, obviously Mike Vrabel. But I'm really curious, knowing he'll collaborate with Vrabel, what he's like aside from the technique and the physical hands-on coaching. When they need to close the gap between them and, say, Baltimore, or themselves and the Bills, and that gap has to be schematic. What's he cooking up? What does he have? Because so much now, as defenses get lighter, obviously you need a good pass rush. That's fundamental to football, win in the trenches. But as the defense kind of stretches backward, more 5-6 defensive backs, what does he have back there? Is he relying on somebody else? Clearly he can command a room. Every time I hear him, he's been a coach forever. But we still don't know a whole lot about him. And to me, that guy is going to have a big influence on who this defense is. And as we expect this to be a defensive team, who this team is going to be.
So first on Downing, I do think that it's really important to have a receivers coach there that's going to set the tone in that room, where I think last year the wide receivers room was out of control to the point where you have Kayshon Boutte saying he needs more targets. You have everything going on with Pulk, that roller coaster, Javon Baker. I mean, they need someone that can be a tone setter in there. And I mean, that's the room last year. Now you throw Stefon Diggs into the mix. So I think Downing's a good call. I think he is intriguing and important here. And then Williams, in addition to the stuff that you said, I think it's going to be fascinating to see how Vrabel works alongside him. Like how much input does Vrabel have on the defense, on the scheme, on the play calling even? How often does he get in his ear? How do they work together? And then obviously his physical presence is intriguing too, where he's been dealing with the health stuff. Hopefully he's back soon. All the best there. But I think that he's a fascinating figure.
And this is another, you can put it like broadly like a character, like this is just a story, who profiles similarly to other defensive line coaches. Again, you listen to him and you're like, I know you're not a mechanic. I know you're not a school teacher. Like this man is a football coach in the way that he speaks and addresses and thinks. And it's notable that Vrabel let him be the head coach of a preseason game during one of his last years in Tennessee. Like the respect there from Vrabel and the trust means something to me because of the respect and trust I have in Mike Vrabel until he proves me otherwise. So, but that only gets you so far. Like Terrell Williams, unlike what Stretch has been for most of his career, can't just be an extension of the head coach. You are the defensive coordinator. You are the head coach of the defense. You are making and leaving your imprint. So besides violence and often playing with 4 down and, wanting to be physical and all the cliches, like what else is he bringing to the table? I don't know, but I'm excited to find out.
That's what I was going to say when you're just, you just jumped on it, but we know he wants to be violent. He wants his defense to be violent. But what are they going to be in addition to being violent? It's like, okay, violence first. Great. That's your core tenant there. What else?
It sounds like an interview for like a cartel or a gang. Like, okay, you want to be violent? Like, what else? If we're doing a sit down, like, all right, you want to join the Bloods? That's cool. Like violence, you're big on the physical stuff. Like, what are you going to bring us? That's going to net some more cash. Like, what can you tell us? All right, very good. So we are going to head into the mailbag, but first, a little detour into the land of Prize Picks, because Prize Picks, as you know, has supported this podcast for a very long time. And as you've heard me talk about going to Red Sox games or watching basketball games that I'm not that invested in, I enjoy them a lot more when I'm rooting for myself. And that helps with Prize Picks, which remains the best place to turn your sports knowledge into cash, whether it's the last series right now in the hockey playoffs or in the basketball playoffs. If you feel like you know ball, if you know hockey, jump in with Prize Picks because it is this easy. You pick 2 to 6 players. Each comes with a stat. It could be hits, it could be runs, it could be goals, it could be points, assists, rebounds, whatever. Okay? You have the option of picking more or less on that number, on that statistic with the player. Scan and look for whomever you want, whatever stat you want. Boom, lock one in. Boom, lock a second one in. More or less on that player. There's a lineup. That's it. You've played Prize Picks. And for people who have not played Prize Picks yet, this is the best part. If you sign up today, you get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. You do not need to win to get the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. I would do it this Sunday for Game 2, Pacers Thunder. Feels like a big Oklahoma City going over the top. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is going to get all the shots you want. More than points? I don't know. Sounds good to me. Either way, whether it's Sunday or Taco Tuesdays, which I read this and I still don't know what tacos are doing in here with the Prize Picks, but you get discounts on Tuesdays, you get stuff on Fridays, but only at Prize Picks. So sign up today. Download the Prize Picks app and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS and get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Since I already asked you about baseball, and again, you're Enterprise, you're everywhere. Do you have any, now that I can say this because it's not copy, NBA Finals or Stanley Cup Final thoughts?
Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Finals was incredible. Game 1 of the NBA Finals was they're both really, really good games. I like the Panthers. Even though they lost Game 1, I think that I like their chances, and I would go OKC in the NBA Finals, even though Halliburton is just like cold-blooded. Ultimately, I think that Oklahoma City was the heavy favorite coming in for a reason. I think they can get over one loss. If they drop Game 2, that is a different story, but I think OKC eventually wins that one.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you one more question, and then we're going to do all the mailbag questions. Halliburton's as a nickname for someone who was closing the show on every opponent in the playoffs as a nickname. Halliburton's, yes or no?
No.
Okay.
No.
I
almost groaned audibly. I had to catch myself. I do not like it.
I heard Stephen A. Smith say Halliburton last night. I was like, oh, that's close to Halliburton. I'm going to keep that to myself. And I know Chris Mason will be unabashedly honest with me as we hard pivot and back into football where I belong. Cleaver with a K. Cleaver Sports asking, quote, is there any noise or possibility surrounding moving Ramondre Stevenson? With 3 quality backs sharing the room, it feels like the Patriots could get pieces to bolster the team in other places.
I don't think his trade value is terribly high given his contract, his position, and the season he's coming off of. So I don't think it makes a lot of sense to move him, honestly. And it's not like you need cap relief or anything like that. So I don't think there's a great need to move him. And then, like, so if you do move him, your room turns into a rookie in Antonio Gibson, which I don't feel great about that compared to having Stevenson in that room. So I don't see him being moved. You?
No, I don't. And we talked about this the other night on TV. Like, I do think the Patriots are going to emphasize the running back room in this new offense in ways that honestly we haven't seen a whole lot of. But this jumping to TreVeyon Henderson, and I'm trying to figure out the fourth person that's being referred to here. It could be Lane Larison. It could be TreVeyon Williams, who they signed from the Bengals. Like, I'm not taking any of that for granted. Okay, we've all been around football in the draft for too long just to lock guys in, even as someone who was already putting Drake May as a future Pro Bowler and All-Pro before he even came to the Patriots, right? I just believed in him that much. I knew I could be wrong. TreVeyon Henderson, I think, profiles is probably a successful back. I don't know yet. So no, until I know that for sure, I'm not trading him. And for all the reasons you cited, I think teams would call if they knew he was on the block. But as soon as the asking price got above like a 6 or 7, they're hanging up. So right. Yeah, no, hang on to one of your better players. All right, speaking of running backs, Kurt Liston. I know it's early, but TreVeyon Henderson over Ramondre Stevenson for fantasy football this season. You nailed Mondre over Damian Harris a few seasons ago. For the record, that was not hard. But Kurt, quote, needs all the help he can get, end quote.
No, I would not take Henderson over Stevenson at this point, just because, I mean, with rookies, it's not always a sure thing. It's not always a seamless transition. Now, understanding that Henderson's an early second-round pick and Stevenson was a fourth-round pick, I get it. But look at Stevenson's rookie year and what happened, where he has an early fumble, he gets blown up in blitz pickup, and then he is just not seen for quite some time. I don't know if it was 4 games, whatever it was. Like, the next month, he's just on the bench. That sort of stuff can happen because it is a huge adjustment going from the college game to the NFL. Now, I don't know if Vrabel would be quite as strict as Belichick was with that one horrible Stevenson game, but either because of that unknown, I would not. I would stick with the sure thing here.
I think there's a case to be made, and I, to be clear, have not played fantasy football for a couple of years. So I usually stick to like one piece of advice, and that's the only thing when people come asking. And this is like friends from elementary school who still come asking about this and that, which they, to be fair, have not asked a whole lot the last couple of years, given the state of the Patriots offense. There's a higher ceiling probably with Henderson, so I understand the question. But if you're also picking someone to, even as Henderson ran more violently, probably caught Terrell Williams' eye last year, I still would think that their Patriots will default to the veteran guy to punch it in on the 201 yard line. If that's important to you and you play fantasy, which I suspect it is, I would stick with a veteran for now. All right, from Kyle Marston.
I have not played fantasy football in over a decade, so that's who you're taking it from here. Yeah, it's not for me. I'm that guy in the league where like people just bug me, and or like join the league. It's like okay, and then I don't care, so I never check the team and everything. I'm the worst. So it's for it's the best for all parties that I just don't play.
We have some sickos on the beat too with fantasy. Doug is one. Yep. Mark Daniels is another. They're in the same league that I was in for a couple of years, but I was the opposite where I didn't check a whole lot, but I was all in. Like they have dynasty, future first round picks, which may or may not have been traded for end of career Mark Ingram.
on the national baseball beat, they have a league that's so intense that it's fake players. They call it nerdball, the entire thing. And you're the GM. I was in that one year when I was on the Red Sox beat, and I just could not keep up with it. I was like, I'm not interested in this. And again, horrible person to have in that league. I think that might be the last fantasy league I was in, was the fake baseball players.
I still have I'm just inviting more YouTube criticisms, but that's fine. I have a podcast, and you can have yours and talk about whatever you want. 20-year anniversary coming up for high school fantasy baseball league next year. And I don't think we're going to go anywhere other than Canton, where we've done the Trillium Top Golf circuit now for a couple of years, but I'd put Vegas on the table. Dubai, Mars. I don't know. We got to go big. If you have any suggestions.
I thought you were talking Pro Football Hall of Fame, and I was like, what? Wait, no. Baseball? That's a bizarre place. It's like Cooperstown?
Yeah, but perhaps more famous than Canton, Ohio right now, given everything surrounding the Karen Reed trial. But we will very much leave the Karen Reed trial right there. Kyle Marston asks, from your observations of OTAs and rookie minicamp, is there one or several players who are flying under the radar and deserve more hype/praise? Or players that deserve more criticism and work? Kyle really opening the door here for all answers, which we appreciate.
Yeah, I appreciate the door being wide open. And I think this time of year, someone that's flying under the radar, Jabril Peppers. These guys can't hit. They can't hit. And as Terrell Williams said, want the defense to be violent. He can't really showcase his violence this time of year, but I thought he was playing at a high level before all of his off the field stuff last year kind of derailed his season. So I think he's going to be an impactful piece. And I think it's telling that Mike Vrabel largely dismantled the leadership group from last year's team, where you've seen so many guys shown the door. Jabril Peppers, not one of them, because still a good player and still, I think, going to play in the vision that Williams and Vrabel both want.
So I'll give Kyle two answers here. Both are on defense, because I just think due to the nature of OTAs and rookie minicamp, honestly, I know people had observations and notes, and you want those. I'm just telling you there's no real value in them, so that's why I'm going to stick to the OTAs. A lot of people talk about offense. It's a passing camp. So receivers get highlighted, tight ends, running backs, quarterbacks. Totally understood. My 2-1 defense, one is someone who has not participated in team periods when we've been there, which is Kyle Duggar, who I just want to mention because that man played on a high ankle sprain, a twisting of his lower leg bones from the end of September through the end of the season. And that was his choice. And it cost the Patriots points at times, but he wanted to do that. And I know for a fact that it mattered to this new regime, and they were impressed by it and appreciated it. We haven't seen him. I'm just going to say don't forget, because the guy that we saw in 2022, we only had a couple more turnovers and more playmaking, and a little bit in 23, was like borderline Pro Bowler. He's still around. Don't forget about him. The other one I had was Braden Swinson, who, you know, it's in the big rotation, defensive line. He's still a 5th-round pick and dropped, not because of football talent. I like the flashes I've seen from him so far, and I don't know if they will continue when they put the pads on. Josh Uche was always the star of OTAs, as you remember. There was a lot of like, this is the year. It's coming back. Here he is, Josh Uche, and then he's gone to Kansas City for a bag of footballs. But for now,
turns out it's easier to pass rush when the offensive linemen don't have pads on and can't go full speed.
Yes, and you have like 2 moves. But yeah, those are my 2. Braden Swinson has impressed with flashes, and Kyle Duggar just because I think people are forgetting, and I don't want you to forget about him. We like May, and the handle's at We Miss Brady. This guy's been through a lot. Asking, quote, not necessarily Patriots related, but is there any word on why Juwan Bentley is still out there? I assume to be a fairly popular free agent target, but I haven't seen any speculation on his market. Hoping he's just waiting for training camp to sign, but not sure that's the case either. Any ideas?
So I don't know what's on this one beyond kind of the obvious, where I believe he turns 29 this summer. He's coming off a torn pec, and I think there are reports that he lost a bunch of weight too. I don't know if that was like designed to try and be a faster linebacker as the league like shifts back and forth again. But I would look to age and injury first. I don't know. You got anything?
Nothing to report. I do think he just launched a podcast. So if you have time for Juwan Bentley's podcast, you might find the answers right there. I do think age and injury are great ones. I also think it's a position that increasingly is more dependent on the scheme, right? Like you have more flavors that coaches are more committed to. You know, it's not an accident that Mike Vrabel, who employed 229-pound inside linebackers in Tennessee, wants the 250-pounder gone, and they parted with him, in addition to the age and injury concerns. So I don't think it's anything too personal to Juwan, because his experience would also tell you, like, yeah, teams would be happy to take a flyer on him. But if I'm him, I don't have to go to OTAs. I can just kind of relax, rehab, and I trust that he's smart enough, and I'm sure he does too, to pick up whatever system's next. Just hang out. So I think that's probably what's going on. I would be shocked if he does not have a team by early August. I'll put it that way. All right, Dave, what is your opinion on the left guard situation? Are City So and Tyrese Robinson really worse than Wes Schweitzer, Cole Strange? Oh, he put in Robinson. Oh, he meant Layden Robinson. So City So and Layden Robinson were out of the picture pretty much, as far as we've seen, with the top personnel, first, second team offense, worse than Wes Schweitzer, Cole Strange, and Tyrese Robinson.
So I think this is going to start with Cole Strange, and you've got to see where he's at, because before the injury in 2023, he was playing at a high level down the stretch there, where he was playing some good football. But then that injury is a nasty one. It's hard to come back from. So I think when they put the pads on, you give Strange the run there first, see if he can get back to a level that he was playing at a couple of years ago. And then if not, you're kind of dipping into this, other realm where Layden Robinson's tape last year was really up and down. And maybe he's someone that can keep building and eventually win that spot. But I think it starts with Strange there. You got to see what you have when they're actually hitting and then go from there.
I agree. And they know this. we've said this, and we will have something different for you in 2 months when we have a couple padded practices out there. But it's just really hard to evaluate the offensive lineman aside from alignment and assignment. Are you where you need to be? Are you doing the things that you're told to? And then after that, it's really going to come down to, the physicality of it. So I think that's why Wes Schweitzer and Cole Strange have a leg up. They're generally more experienced than those other players. And so they trust that they'll do what needs to be done. And that gives everyone else around them a shot to succeed because the play is not immediately blown up because you've got A gap pressure or B gap pressure because they screwed up like a first, second, or third year player might. So that's all that I have. And Doug made the point too that Layden Robinson had a huge fan in Gerard Mayo. And when the head coach really loves a player, and the offensive line coach is in his first year of that job, Ty is going to go to the head coach. So there's so much last year that was so messy, but we're gonna learn a lot more in a couple of months. Epri, who snuck in late this morning, actually, are the Pats whistling past the graveyard? Speaking of offensive line, I'm not sold on Campbell. No left guard. Worst pass blocking center money can buy. Mike Onwenu out of shape again, which I don't know for sure, so I'm not going to co-sign on that. Finishing his question, Moses was awful last season and isn't getting younger. I will push back about Morgan Moses being awful. He was among the better pass protectors at right tackle, but the age concerns and the potential for a drop-off are, of course, legitimate.
While that's a bit overstated by our guy, I do think the offensive line is by far the number one biggest concern facing this team, where he did highlight some of those issues, and you can go across the entire line, and there's a question mark with every single one. So I do think it's a real concern. I think depth is a concern. And so, yeah, there's something to be said, I think, for whistling across the graveyard. And this time of year, you're not going to see a ton of that because it's a passing camp. You're not going to know until training camp starts, really until joint practices, where the offensive line is at. But I think there are real concerns there still.
I agree. And I want to backtrack because it's easy to forget, even though this was like 2 months ago, 2.5 months ago. And this is not excuse making. It's just what happened. The Patriots had Ronnie Stanley as plan A. They were willing to pay him way more than he re-signed for in Baltimore. Same with Chris Godwin as a receiver in Tampa Bay. Didn't get him. Okay. And then you go on to Dan Moore, who signs a deal far richer than anyone would have expected from a super average left tackle in Pittsburgh to go play for the Titans. And they get outpriced there. So Will Campbell is someone they obviously fell in love with. I think when you take someone that high, you believe they can be a legitimate starter right away. I think at right tackle, Morgan Moses obviously was not plan A either. And I know that their interior offensive line plans similarly were blown up in free agency because they just couldn't get guys to come here. So, yes, I think it's a legitimate worry. This is number one on my list. And then there's a huge gap for why things might go awry this season. But, again, with Onwenu, who said he's recovering from a hand injury, that's why he's sitting out some of the team periods. I care way more about what he weighs in late July than I do in May and June. And we'll see. It could be out of shape. I don't know. We'll find out. But they tried, and they had such a huge hole to dig out of that the fact that they didn't get all the way to the top, yes, is concerning. But also, when you backtrack, you understand why. I'll also say this. I think they're probably banking on the fact that this is appreciably better run-blocking offensive line than it was a year ago. Like, Bradbury's a good run blocker, so Moses is fine. Onwenu is good. Campbell's going to be a better run blocker than pass protector as a rookie. That if they get leads, they can kind of lean on that offensive line. I don't really agree with that assessment, but knowing Vrabel and McDaniels and the personnel around them, that seems to make sense, no?
Yeah, I agree. And, Vrabel will go out of his way in random answers to be like, well, offenses that throw the ball 40 times a game don't win in the league. He's done that a couple times now where it'll be like a different topic almost, and he shoehorns that in. So I think he definitely does want to be run first generally, and I think he wants to run the ball a lot. And with the personnel, it makes sense.
Yeah. All right, we got 2 more. We got to get you out of here, I'm going to save this question. We're not going to answer it. Jack Abbott is asking for offensive and defensive breakout players of the year. Jack Abbott, I like the question. We don't have time right now. I will save this and file it away for the next 6 weeks. So 2 left. Bitter Brian, comedy, is asking which position group besides quarterback do you see having the biggest impact on the team this year in terms of wins and losses? Thanks. And I think we just kind of answered it. Is it your offensive line?
Yep, that was going to be my answer right there, is we were just hammering it. But I do think that the offensive line, while appreciably better than last year, it just still has such a variance there where if they're good, that's huge. If they're bad, they could be really bad, and that could absolutely derail everything.
Since I agree, I'll offer a second one. And you can make a good case for the receivers, but because of the fact that May can also dump the ball off to the running backs, work the middle of the field with the tight ends, that lessens their important. I look at the defensive line and just the pressure that they could be. I mean, again, you talk about variance. Christian Barmore, outstanding 2023 season. Didn't play last year. What are we getting now? What does Keon White have? What does Braden Swinson have? Are there any other players that could kind of take this defensive line to maybe top 10 in the league territory, which I think would be the high-end outcome? Again, top 10 meaning just cracking 9, 10, maybe 8. Or is this a unit that you can see Milton Williams, understandably, tired from playing 60 to 70% of the snaps? Barmore's not himself. And Braden Swinson looks like the 5th-round pick that he is. I don't know. Because the whole defense, even if it's really good in the secondary, if you're going to generate turnovers or affect the quarterback, like it starts there. Strip sacks, pressure, not just banking on Carlton Davis or Christian Gonzalez breaking on the ball to make all those picks. I think the defensive line is probably second.
As a former lineman, I just love that we went with the trenches with both of these here.
Yes.
It's where the games are won and lost.
Long snapper, pretty far behind, unfortunately for you. But well, at least we got the line.
Also center, not just a long snapper.
Also center, okay. Matt Jenkins. I'm just going to assume that's this man's name because otherwise he has Jat Mankins as his handle. So Matt Jenkins, flipping the first letters. Lots of people writing off Jaylen Pulk. The entire offensive situation was horrid last year, agree. So it's short-sighted to make judgments about him. At the same time, Bourne continues to get listed as a lock just by doing very little here. I think Bourne gets cut. Thoughts? So he's saying, are we writing off Pulk? And is Bourne actually a lock?
I don't think Bourne is a lock. No, I think that he's going to be competing for one of those spots. And I wouldn't totally write off Pulk yet, just given where he was drafted, a new offense, everything. But last year was bad. Last year was historically bad. Vrabel could say clean slate and everything, but last year really, really didn't go well. So we'll see if he's got anything left. I wouldn't totally write him off yet, but he's another one that's going to be competing for a spot. So I think both of those guys are legitimately competing in training camp this summer.
I think it's important to note that the bar for those two players is going to be different because of where they are in their careers, and that Jaylen Pulk can make the team as the 6th best receiver. If Kendrick Bourne is the 6th best receiver, he's getting traded or cut. Like that's just what it is based on who you are and what you could produce. Because Jaylen Polk's still a recent 2nd-round pick, because of the just probably worst position coaching in the entire league last year belonged to the Patriots receivers. His drops, the confidence, the fact that there is some pedigree there. He's going to get more chances. Kendrick Bourne is not a lock. I would put him at a soft lock just because of his success in the system, who he's been another year after removed from the ACL. But there are a lot of guys here now. Like they have optionality. They've got some depth to figure things out. And no one is safe really aside from Diggs and Kyle Williams probably. Yeah, definitely Kyle Williams. Even Pop Douglas. Like I don't see a world in which they keep Pop Douglas and Efton Chisholm because I don't trust either to play outside. Maybe they do. But for now, everyone's feeling a little bit of heat in that room. And I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, as they should. There should be a huge competition. And like you just said, those two locks, I think, are actual locks. And the rest, it's compete. See what you can do in training camp. That's another Vrabelism. We're going to compete. They're going to compete. They're going to compete. Everyone's going to compete. Competition everywhere. I think you're going to see that at camp, especially in the wide receiver room.
All right, ending in the place everyone expected us to when we started this podcast. He is Chris Mason of MassLive. You got to go. We have a weekend to get to. I will have 2 episodes next week. Rumor has it I've been bugging our pal Mike Giardi, who was always just – did you know – I'm not going to ask you another question. We're going to get out here. 2 episodes next week.
I'm here for Giardi talk. What do you got?
I'll talk to you off the air because I've already brought up what I'm going to ask you about on this air on the episode, and we've taken so many detours. This was awesome. Thank you for your time. I will see you next week in minicamp, yeah?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Thanks, pal.
Thanks for having me on, bud.